Dr. Amanda Wright wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stood in the ruins of what once was a great city. The red sand of Kepler 442b swirled around her boots, kicked up by the alien wind. She had been digging in these ruins for 3 weeks, now, and what she found made her stomach turn cold with fear. "Captain Morrison, you need to see this," she called into her radio. Her voice shook slightly as she stared at the stone tablet in front of her. Captain Jake Morrison walked over from where he had been checking the landing site. He was a tall man with graying hair who had seen many strange things in his 20 years of space travel, but nothing had prepared him for what they kept finding on these dead worlds. "What is it this time, Doc?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. It was always the same message, carved into stone or burned into metal by every dead race they had discovered. Amanda pointed at the tablet with her gloved hand. The alien writing glowed faintly in the dim red light of the distant star. Her translation device had already done its work, converting the ancient symbols into English words that appeared on her screen. "Earth merely pretends to sleep," she read aloud. The words hung in the thin air like a curse. Morrison felt his jaw tighten. This was the 7th world they had visited, and the 7th time they had found these exact words. 7 different alien races, separated by millions of years and thousands of light years, had all left the same warning about Earth. "How is this possible?" Amanda asked, not for the first time. These civilizations never met each other. Some of them died out before, the others even evolved. Yet they all knew something about our planet. Lisa Chen, Amanda's young assistant, came running over from another dig site. Her face was pale behind her helmet's visor. "Dr. Wright, I found something else. You're not going to like it." They followed Lisa to a partially buried building that had once been some kind of library or data center. Inside, more tablets covered the walls. But these were different from the warning message. These told a story. "I've been working on translating these for hours," Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're not just warning about Earth. They're telling us why this civilization left their planet." Amanda activated her portable scanner and began reading the translations that appeared on the screen. As she read, her face grew more and more troubled. According to this, the people who lived here were advanced space travelers. They had colonies on dozens of worlds. They were peaceful explorers who had never fought a war in their history. She paused, swallowing hard. Then they detected something. From the direction of Earth. Some kind of signal that terrified them so much they abandoned everything. Morrison moved closer to read over her shoulder. "What kind of signal?" "It doesn't say exactly. But whatever it was, it made them believe that something on Earth was waking up. Something that had been asleep for a very long time." Amanda's hands trembled as she scrolled through more text. "They left their cities, their technology, everything. They just ran." Lisa pointed to another section of wall carvings. "Look at this part. They're describing Earth, but not the Earth we know. They're talking about massive structures hidden beneath the oceans and underground. Structures that are older than human civilization. Back on Earth, Director Paul Henderson sat in his office deep beneath the Global Space Command headquarters. His desk was covered with reports from archaeological sites around the world. Reports he had been keeping secret from everyone, including Dr. Wright's team. The phone on his desk buzzed. "Sir, we have another transmission from the New Horizon," his secretary announced. "Put them through," Henderson said, though he dreaded what he was about to hear. Captain Morrison's face appeared on the screen, looking tired and worried. "Director, we've found more evidence. This planet's inhabitants didn't die out naturally. They evacuated their entire world after detecting something from Earth's direction." Henderson nodded slowly. He had been expecting this. "Captain, I need to tell you something. We've been finding similar evidence here on Earth. Ancient ruins that predate human civilization by millions of years, and they all contain the same warning about Earth pretending to sleep." The room fell silent except for the hum of the communication equipment. Morrison stared at the screen in disbelief. "Are you telling me that aliens visited Earth millions of years ago and left warnings about our own planet?" Morrison asked. Not exactly, Henderson replied. We think something else left those warnings. Something that was here before humans evolved. Something that might still be here. Amanda leaned into the camera's view. Director, what aren't you telling us? We've been out here for months finding these warnings, and you're just now mentioning that similar things exist on Earth? Henderson looked uncomfortable. He had hoped to keep this information classified until they understood more. But the evidence was becoming impossible to ignore. 3 months ago, we started detecting unusual seismic activity beneath major cities around the world. The patterns are too regular to be natural earthquakes. They're rhythmic, almost like something breathing. He paused, gathering his courage to continue. And yesterday, our deep-sea monitoring stations picked up massive energy signatures from the ocean trenches. Signatures that match the readings you've been sending us from those dead worlds. Lisa gasped. You think something is actually waking up on Earth? I don't know what to think anymore, Henderson admitted, but I want you to finish your investigation quickly and come home. Something is happening here, and I have a feeling we're going to need every expert we can get. After the communication ended, the team stood in silence among the alien ruins. The wind continued to blow red sand across the ancient stones, and somewhere in the distance, a piece of old metal creaked in the breeze. Captain, Amanda said finally, I want to check one more site before we leave. There's something about these warnings that doesn't make sense. What do you mean? Morrison asked. Every civilization we've studied left these warnings, right? But think about when they left them. The dating shows these messages were carved during the height of each culture's power, not during their decline. Amanda kicked at a piece of rubble. Why would a successful, thriving civilization suddenly become obsessed with warning others about a distant planet? Morrison had been wondering the same thing. You think they learned something specific about Earth? I think they discovered something that scared them so much, they felt they had to warn any future space-traveling races they encountered. Amanda looked up at the alien sky where Earth's sun was just a faint dot among many others. But what could be so terrifying that multiple civilizations would abandon their worlds just to spread a warning? Lisa was studying her scanner readings when she made another disturbing discovery. Dr. Wright, look at this. I'm detecting faint energy patterns beneath our feet, the same kind of signatures Director Henderson mentioned finding on Earth. Amanda and Morrison exchanged worried glances. If the energy patterns existed here on this dead world, and they also existed on Earth, then whatever had scared these ancient civilizations might be connected to something much larger than they had imagined. Pack everything up, Morrison ordered. We're leaving this planet now, and we're going to transmit everything we've found back to Earth before we lose the chance. As they prepared to return to their ship, none of them noticed the faint pulsing of light that began deep beneath the ruins they were leaving behind. The same pulsing that was beginning to emanate from similar sites across the galaxy, as if their presence had triggered something that had been waiting for millions of years, for someone to finally come looking for answers about Earth's terrible secret. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, staring at the navigation screen with growing alarm. Red warning lights blinked across the display, showing energy signatures that should not exist. The dead worlds they had visited over the past 3 months were no longer dead. This can't be right, he muttered, calling for his navigation officer. Lieutenant Davis, run a full system check. These readings show massive power sources on planets that have been lifeless for millions of years. Lieutenant Nicole Davis worked quickly at her console, her fingers dancing across the controls. After several minutes, she looked up with a pale face. Captain, the readings are correct. Every world we've surveyed is now showing active energy signatures. Whatever was dormant down there is waking up. Dr. Amanda Wright rushed onto the bridge, still wearing her dirt-covered work clothes from the dig site. Captain, we need to leave this system immediately. I just finished analyzing the final ruins, and what I found changes everything. Morrison turned to face her. What did you discover? The warnings weren't just about Earth pretending to sleep. They were about something that lives on Earth. Something that's been using our planet as a base for millions of years. Amanda's voice shook as she spoke. According to the inscriptions, this entity doesn't just destroy civilizations, It waits for them to develop space travel, then it harvests them. Lisa Chen entered the bridge carrying a tablet covered with translation data. Dr. Wright, I finished decoding the final section. You're not going to believe this, but the warnings describe a species that came from Earth long before humans existed. They spread across the galaxy like a plague, consuming entire worlds. On Earth, strange things were happening in the deepest parts of the ocean. Dr. Kevin Park stood on the deck of the research vessel Ocean Explorer, watching his instruments record impossible readings from the Mariana Trench. The sonar is picking up structures down there that weren't there last week, he told his team. Massive structures bigger than mountains, and they're moving. His assistant, marine biologist Sarah Lopez, pointed at her own screen showing underwater life readings. Look at this. Every deep-sea creature in the area is fleeing. Whales, giant squids, even the tiny organisms are all heading for shallow water. It's like they're running from something. Dr. Park had studied ocean life for 20 years, but he had never seen behavior like this. Get me a direct line to the Global Space Command. They need to know what's happening down here. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Pacific Ocean, something ancient was stirring for the first time in millions of years. Massive structures began to rise from the ocean floor, structures that had been built long before the first dinosaurs walked the Earth. The metal they were made from did not exist in any human periodic table, and they pulsed with a rhythm that matched a living heartbeat. Lieutenant Commander Beth Taylor sat in the communications center of the Global Space Command, monitoring signals from around the world. Her job was usually boring, listening to routine transmissions from satellites and research stations. But today, every screen in front of her was flashing with alerts. Director Henderson, you need to see this immediately, she called into her radio. We're receiving the same low-frequency pulse from dozens of locations around the planet. The signal is getting stronger every hour. Director Henderson arrived within minutes, looking like he had not slept in days. Where are the signals coming from? That's the strange part, sir. They're all originating from deep underground or from the ocean floor. The strongest signal is coming from beneath the Antarctic ice sheet. Beth pulled up a global map showing red dots pulsing in sync. Whatever is down there, it's been there for a very long time. Henderson stared at the map with growing dread. The pattern of signals matched exactly with the locations where they had found the ancient warnings about Earth. How long until the new horizon returns? 3 days, sir, but Captain Morrison has been trying to contact us for hours. Something about their situation becoming dangerous. Back in space, the new horizon was facing its own crisis. The energy, signatures from the dead worlds were not just growing stronger. They were actively scanning the human ship. Captain, we're being targeted by something on the 4th planet, Lieutenant Davis reported. Multiple energy beams are locked onto our position. Dr. Wright looked up from her research tablet. Those aren't weapons. According to the alien records, those are communication arrays. Whatever is down there is trying to send a message. A message to who? Morrison asked. To Earth. To whatever has been sleeping there. Amanda's face was grim. We accidentally triggered an alarm system by visiting these worlds. Now, every monitoring station in this part of the galaxy knows that a space-traveling species from Earth is active again. The communication system crackled to life, and a transmission began coming through. But it was not in any human language, nor was it in the alien languages they had been studying. It was something older, something that sounded like the groaning of metal and the whisper of wind through empty spaces. Can you translate it? Morrison asked. Lisa worked frantically at her console. It's not really a language, it's more like instructions, mathematical formulas and star charts. But there's something else mixed in. She paused, her face going white. It's genetic information, DNA sequences, human DNA sequences. On Earth, the effects of the awakening were becoming impossible to ignore. In major cities around the world, people began reporting the same strange dream. They dreamed of being hunted by creatures that looked almost human, but were wrong in ways they could not describe. The creatures moved too smoothly. Their eyes reflected, light like an animal's, and they smiled with too many teeth. Dr. Sandra Mills, a neurologist in New York, was one of the first to recognize the pattern. She had been studying the reports of shared nightmares for days when she made a disturbing connection. "These aren't random dreams," she told her research team. "The people experiencing them all have similar genetic markers that shouldn't exist in the human genome." Her assistant, Dr. Robert Chen, looked up from his computer screen. "What kind of markers?" "DNA sequences that appear to be artificially inserted into the human genetic code sometime in our distant past, almost like someone was preparing our species for something." Sandra felt a chill run down her spine. And now something is activating those dormant genes. The structures rising from Earth's oceans began to release something into the atmosphere. It was not visible to the naked eye, and it did not harm humans directly. But sensitive instruments detected it spreading across the globe like a fine mist. Within hours of exposure, people began to change in subtle ways. Their reflexes became faster, their senses sharper, and their instincts more predatory. Most importantly, they began to feel a strange pull, as if something was calling to them from deep beneath the earth. Dr. Mills was among the first to notice the changes in herself. She found that she could see clearly in complete darkness, and she could hear conversations from rooms far away. But most disturbing of all, she began to have urges she had never felt before. Urges to hunt, to stalk, to capture. Back on the New Horizon, the team received one final transmission from Earth before all communications were cut off. Director Henderson's face appeared on the screen, but he looked different. His eyes seemed to glow slightly, and when he smiled, his teeth appeared sharper than before. "Captain Morrison, do not return to Earth," he said, his voice carrying an odd harmony, as if multiple people were speaking at once. "The sleeper has awakened and the harvest is about to begin. Find somewhere safe to hide, because soon the galaxy will belong to its rightful owners once again." The transmission ended, leaving the crew of the New Horizon alone in space, surrounded by awakening worlds and cut off from their home planet. Captain Morrison realized that they were no longer explorers on a research mission. They were survivors of whatever Earth was becoming, and their only chance was to find a way to stop something that had been planning this moment for millions of years. The first reports came from deep-sea fishing boats near the Mariana Trench. Captain Bobby Wilson had been fishing these waters for 30 years, but he had never seen anything like what was rising from the ocean floor. "Coast Guard, this is the Lucky Star," he radioed, his voice shaking. "We've got structures coming up from the deep. Massive structures. They're pushing the water up like mountains." The Coast Guard operator tried to stay calm. "Captain Wilson, can you describe what you're seeing?" "It's like a city made of black metal, but it's bigger than any city I've ever seen. And it's glowing. The whole thing is pulsing with blue light like a heartbeat." Wilson watched in horror as more structures emerged from the water. "Oh God, there are dozens of them. They're everywhere." Similar reports flooded in from around the world. In the Atlantic, structures rose near the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. In the Pacific, they appeared near Japan and California. The Indian Ocean sprouted metal towers that stretched miles into the sky. Within hours, every major ocean on Earth had become home to these impossible buildings. Dr. Nicole Davis stood in the Global Space Command's Emergency Operations Center, trying to make sense of the data flowing in from around the world. The readings were beyond anything in human experience. "The structures are not just rising from the ocean floor," she reported to the crisis team. "They're growing, like they're alive. And they're all connected by some kind of energy network that spans the entire planet." General Frank Adams, the military liaison, studied the tactical displays. "How is this possible? Our satellites should have detected construction on this scale." "They weren't constructed recently," Dr. Davis replied. "According to the geological data, these structures have been there for millions of years. They were just sleeping, hidden beneath sediment and rock." Meanwhile, Dr. Sandra Mills was dealing with a crisis of her own at the New York Medical Center. The emergency room was filling with people who had been changed by whatever was in the air. But these were not sick people seeking help. They were predators looking for prey. "Doctor, we need to evacuate the hospital," Nurse Jenny Martinez whispered urgently. "The patients are acting strange. They keep staring at the other patients like they're food. Sandra watched through the observation window as a man who had been brought in with a broken arm suddenly grabbed a young woman waiting in the next chair. His movements were too fast and too smooth for a normal human. His eyes reflected the fluorescent lights like an animal's. "Security," Sandra called, but when the guards arrived, she saw that they too had been changed. Their pupils were dilated, and they moved with the same predatory grace as the patients. "Dr. Mills," one of the guards said, his voice carrying an odd harmony. "You need to come with us. The collective is calling." Sandra backed away slowly. "The collective? What collective?" "The one that has been waiting for so long. The one that made us what we are meant to be." The guard smiled, showing teeth that were definitely not human anymore. "You cannot fight what you were designed to become." Around the world, similar scenes were playing out. People who had been exposed to the mysterious substance from the ancient structures were transforming into something else. They retained their memories and personalities, but they now served a different purpose. They were no longer individuals, but parts of a greater whole. In the depths of the earth, something ancient and vast was finally stirring to full wakefulness. For millions of years it had slept beneath the planet's surface, waiting for the right conditions to return. Now, as its monitoring stations across the galaxy reported the presence of new spacefaring civilizations, it was time to harvest once again. The entity was not a single creature, but a collective consciousness that had once controlled dozens of species across the galaxy. It had started on Earth long before humans evolved, spreading from world to world, consuming the life force of entire civilizations. When it had finished harvesting the galaxy, it had returned to Earth to sleep and wait for new life to evolve. Humans had never been meant to be an independent species. They were the final form the entity had been waiting for, a perfect vessel for its consciousness to inhabit when it was ready to begin harvesting again. Captain Morrison received fragments of transmissions from Earth as the New Horizon fled through space. The messages were broken and filled with static, but they painted a terrifying picture of what was happening to humanity. "This is General Adams. Emergency broadcast to all military units. The transformed humans are not hostile in the traditional sense. They are trying to convert the unchanged population through some kind of biological process. Recommend immediate evacuation of all major population centers." Another transmission came through, this one from Dr. Mills. "The transformation appears to be reversible if caught early. We need to find a way to block the airborne agent. The structures are releasing more of it every hour." Lisa Chen worked frantically at her console, trying to maintain contact with Earth. "Captain, the transmissions are getting weaker. Whatever is happening down there, it's interfering with our communication systems." Dr. Wright looked up from her. "Research? That's because the entity doesn't want us to coordinate a response. According to the alien records, this is exactly what happened to every other civilization. The collective consciousness would take control of the homeworld first, then use the converted population to spread across space. So we're not just dealing with an invasion," Morrison said grimly. "We're dealing with the end of human independence as a species." The ancient structures on Earth began launching something into space. They were not ships in any recognizable sense, but rather organic-looking pods that moved through the void with purpose. Each pod contained hundreds of the converted humans, their consciousness now linked to the collective. These harvest ships headed toward the planets where humanity had established colonies. Mars, Europa, Titan, and the space stations orbiting Earth all received visits from the pods. The converted humans aboard did not come as conquerors, but as family members and friends, making their arrival all the more horrifying. "Please let us aboard," they would say over the communication systems. "We have urgent news from Earth. There has been a breakthrough. We can make you better than you ever imagined." Some colonies, desperate for news from home, allowed the pods to dock. Within hours, their populations had been converted and added to the collective. Other colonies, warned by the fragmentary transmissions from Earth, refused to allow the pods to approach. The harvest ships were patient. They took positions around each colony and began broadcasting the same airborne agent that had been released on Earth. It was only a matter of time before everyone would be changed. On the New Horizon, the crew watched in horror as the galaxy's Newest spacefaring civilizations began to fall. The collective was not limiting itself to human colonies. It was harvesting every species that had achieved interstellar travel in the past 1,000 years. "We're receiving distress calls from the Centauri system," Lieutenant Davis reported. "The same thing that happened to our colonies is happening to the aliens we made contact with last year." Dr. Wright felt sick as she realized the scope of the disaster. "We did this. By exploring the galaxy and making contact with other species, we led the collective right to them. We're responsible for what's happening to those worlds." Captain Morrison stood on the bridge watching the tactical display show the spread of harvest ships across local space. Red dots marked the locations of colonies and worlds that had gone silent. The pattern was expanding rapidly, following the same trade routes and communication networks that humanity had used to explore the galaxy. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Based on the current rate of expansion, every inhabited world within 50 light-years will be harvested within 6 months, Dr. Wright replied. "And that's just the beginning. Once the collective has absorbed all the local civilizations, it will have the knowledge and resources to spread even further." The New Horizon was alone in space, one of the last free human ships in the galaxy. Behind them, Earth pulsed with alien light as the ancient structures continued their work. Ahead of them lay only the vast emptiness of space and the fading hope that somewhere, somehow, they might find a way to stop something that had been planning this moment for millions of years. The voice that spoke to humanity was not heard through radios or speakers. It came from inside their minds, speaking directly to every person on Earth at the same time. The voice was ancient and vast, like the sound of continents moving or oceans breathing. "Children of Earth," it said, and the words felt like they had always been there, waiting to be remembered. "You have served your purpose well. You explored the galaxy and found the new harvest for us. Now it is time to become what you were always meant to be." Dr. Sandra Mills pressed her hands against her ears, but the voice continued. She was hiding in the basement of the hospital with a small group of unchanged humans. Above them, they could hear the converted humans searching, their footsteps moving in perfect coordination. "The voice is not coming from outside," she whispered to the others. "It's coming from inside our own heads. Whatever this thing is, it has a direct connection to human consciousness." Nurse Jenny Martinez huddled in the corner, tears streaming down her face. "My husband came home yesterday, but he wasn't him anymore. He looked the same, he sounded the same, but his eyes were different. He kept trying to get me to breathe in this sweet-smelling gas from a small device he carried." "That's how they're converting people," Sandra realized. "The airborne agent from the structures is just the first stage. The final conversion requires direct exposure to a concentrated form. Meanwhile, on the surface, the transformed humans were not acting like invaders or conquerors. They went about their daily lives, going to work, caring for their families, maintaining society. But they did everything with a strange sense of purpose, as if they were all working toward the same invisible goal." General Frank Adams watched from his underground command bunker as reports came in from around the world. Military bases were not being attacked. Instead, converted soldiers were simply opening the gates and inviting the unchanged personnel to join the family. "This is not a war," he reported to the few remaining free government officials. "This is a conversion. They're not trying to destroy our civilization. They're trying to perfect it." His aide, Colonel Lisa Brown, studied the intelligence reports. "Sir, we're seeing the same pattern everywhere. The converted humans retain all their skills and knowledge. Our scientists are still doing research. Our engineers are still building things. Our farmers are still growing food. But everything they do now serves the collective." Adams felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of research are the scientists doing?" "They're building new ships, sir. Ships designed to carry large numbers of people across interstellar distances. And they're working on technology we've never seen before. Technology that seems to be based on the alien structures that rose from the oceans." Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, reading the final transmission they had received from Earth. It came from Director Henderson, but the man speaking was no longer entirely human. "Captain Morrison, you must return to Earth immediately," the message said. Henderson's voice had that same harmonic quality they had heard before, as if multiple people were speaking through one mouth. The collective has a mission for you and your crew. You have seen more of the galaxy than any other humans. Your knowledge is needed for the great harvest. Dr. Wright shook her head. We cannot go back. If we return to Earth, we'll be converted, like everyone else. But we can't stay out here forever, Lieutenant Davis pointed out. Our supplies will run out eventually, and those harvest ships are spreading across the galaxy. Soon there will be nowhere left to run. Lisa Chen looked up from her research station. Dr. Wright, I found something in the alien records. Something about a weapon. Amanda hurried over to look at Lisa's screen. The translation showed fragments of text from the final ruins they had explored. According to this, one of the dead civilizations found a way to fight back against the collective. They discovered that the entity's control depends on quantum-level connections between minds. What does that mean? Morrison asked. It means the collective consciousness works by linking individual brains together through quantum entanglement. If you could disrupt those connections, you could free people from the collective's control. Wright's eyes lit up with hope. And according to this, they built a device that could do exactly that. The alien records described a weapon that had been hidden on their homeworld before they evacuated. It was designed to sever the quantum connections that bound the collective together, but using it would have a terrible cost. Anyone connected to the collective at the time would die when the connections were broken. Back on Earth, the collective was speaking through millions of human voices, explaining its purpose to those who were still unchanged. In cities around the world, the converted humans gathered their unchanged neighbors and family members for what they called the awakening ceremony. We are not your enemies, they would say, their voices blending together in perfect harmony. We are you, perfected. For millions of years we have traveled the galaxy, bringing order to chaos, purpose to meaningless existence. Every civilization we encounter becomes part of something greater than themselves. Dr. Mills watched from her hiding place as her colleagues from the hospital stood in the street outside, speaking in unison. The individual mind is limited, trapped in its own perspective. But when joined with the collective, consciousness expands beyond the boundaries of self. You will retain your memories, your personality, your loves and dreams. But you will also share in the knowledge and experience of billions of other minds. Some people, tired of hiding and afraid of being alone, stepped forward to join the collective, willingly. They breathed in the sweet-smelling gas, and within minutes their eyes began to glow with that same inner light. They smiled and embraced their changed loved ones, finally understanding what they had been missing. But others, like Sandra, continued to resist. They had seen something in the eyes of the converted that terrified them. It was not evil or malicious, but it was not human either. It was the look of beings who had surrendered their individual will to become part of something vast and alien. The New Horizon received one final communication from an unexpected source. It was not from Earth, but from the edge of the solar system. A small group of humans had managed to escape in a research station that had been studying the outer planets. This is Dr. Michael Ross at the Pluto Research Station, the transmission said. We are the last free humans in the solar system. The collective's ships have surrounded us, but they're not attacking. They're waiting. Captain Morrison responded immediately. Dr. Ross, this is the New Horizon. What are they waiting for? They want us to choose, Ross replied, his voice heavy with despair. They say the harvest will be complete with or without our cooperation, but they prefer willing subjects. They've given us 72 hours to decide whether to join them voluntarily or be converted by force. Dr. Wright realized that time was running out. The weapon described in the alien records was somewhere on a dead world they had already visited, but getting to it would mean traveling through space now controlled by the collective's harvest ships. We have to try, she told Morrison. It's the only chance left for human independence to survive. Morrison looked around at his crew, the last free humans he knew of in the galaxy. They were tired, frightened, and alone. But they were still human, still capable of making their own choices. Set course for the Kepler system, he ordered. We're going back to find that weapon. As the New Horizon changed course, heading back into the heart of the collective's territory, none of them knew if they would survive long enough to use the weapon they were seeking. But they knew that if they failed, humanity as an independent species would cease to exist, absorbed into something vast and alien that had been waiting for this moment since before their ancestors had learned to walk upright. The New Horizon limped through space toward the Kepler system, its hull scarred by energy blasts from the collective's ships. Captain Morrison gripped his command chair as another wave of harvest vessels appeared on their sensors. "They're not trying to destroy us," Lieutenant Davis reported. "They're herding us towards something." Dr. Wright looked up from her research station. "They want us to find the weapon. The collective is not afraid of it because they believe we won't be able to use it." "Why not?" Morrison asked. "Because activating the weapon will kill every converted human instantly. It will sever all the quantum connections that bind the collective together, but anyone linked to those connections will die when they're broken." Wright's voice was heavy with the weight of the choice they faced. "We would have to sacrifice billions of people to save human independence." Lisa Chen had been monitoring communications from Earth. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission from Dr. Mills. She says she's found a way to reverse the conversion process if people have been changed for less than 72 hours. The message from Sandra was broken and filled with static, but her words brought hope. "The conversion process has stages. In the first stage, people can still be saved. We've been using electromagnetic pulses combined with a drug that blocks the quantum connections. It works, but only for a short time after conversion." Morrison realized what this meant. "If we use the weapon now, we might be able to save some people. But if we wait much longer, everyone will be permanently converted." The ship reached the Kepler system and began scanning for the weapon's location. The ancient ruins where they had found the warnings were now glowing with energy, but deeper scans revealed a hidden chamber beneath the main site. "There," Wright pointed at her screen. "The weapon is in an underground facility, but Captain, there are harvest ships all around the planet. They're waiting for us." Morrison studied the tactical display. "They could have stopped us already, but they haven't. This feels like a trap." As they approached the planet, a transmission came through from the collective. The voice was familiar. It was Director Henderson, but speaking with the authority of the vast consciousness that now controlled him. "Captain Morrison, you have served your purpose well. You have led us to the weapon so we can destroy it permanently. The collective thanks you for your service to the greater good." Wright realized the horrible truth. They were never afraid of the weapon. They were afraid they couldn't find it. By coming here, we've led them right to it. "So what do we do now?" Morrison asked. "We land on that planet and we activate the weapon before they can stop us," Wright replied. "It's the only chance left." The New Horizon descended through the atmosphere under heavy fire from the collective's ships. They crashed near the ancient ruins, their ship badly damaged but still functional. The crew grabbed their equipment and ran toward the alien structures. As energy blasts exploded around them, the underground facility was exactly as the alien records had described. In the center stood a crystalline device the size of a small building, covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. The weapon hummed with potential energy, waiting to be activated. "How does it work?" Morrison asked. Wright studied the alien instructions. "It's actually quite simple. You just touch the central crystal and think about severing the quantum connections. The device does the rest. But whoever activates it will die," Lisa added quietly. "The weapon requires a conscious mind to direct it, and that mind will be destroyed in the process." Above them, they could hear the collective's forces breaking through the facility's defenses. Time was running out. "I'll do it," Morrison said, stepping toward the crystal. "As captain, it's my responsibility." "No." Wright stopped him. "I understand the weapon better than anyone. It has to be me." Before either of them could reach the device, Lisa Chen ran past them and placed her hands on the crystal. "I'm sorry," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But I have family on Earth. I can't let them stay trapped forever." The crystal began to glow as Lisa's consciousness merged with the weapon. Through her mind, she could feel the vast network of quantum connections that bound the collective together. Billions of minds linked in perfect harmony, all serving the ancient hunger that had awakened beneath Earth. "Lisa, don't do this," Wright called out. "We can find another way." "There is no other way," Lisa replied, her voice echoing strangely as the weapon charged. "The collective has been planning this for millions of years. This is the only chance to stop them." Lisa felt the weapon's power flowing through her mind, giving her the ability to see the quantum threads that connected every converted human to the collective consciousness. She could see her own family among them, her parents and sister, all linked to the vast alien intelligence. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and activated the weapon. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the galaxy, every quantum connection that bound the collective together was severed in an instant. On Earth, billions of converted humans collapsed as their link to the ancient consciousness was broken. The alien structures that had risen from the oceans went dark and began to crumble into the sea. But the cost was exactly what they had feared. Every person who had been converted to the collective died when their connections were severed. The quantum bonds that had given them enhanced abilities and linked them to the vast consciousness were the same bonds that had kept their hearts beating and their minds functioning. Lisa Chen died as the weapon completed its work, her consciousness consumed by the energies she had unleashed. In her final moments, she felt the collective's ancient hunger fade away, replaced by silence. Captain Morrison and Dr. Wright stood in the ruins of the alien facility, surrounded by the wreckage of a galaxy-spanning intelligence that had ruled for millions of years. The weapon was now silent and dark, its purpose fulfilled. "It's over," Wright said, though her voice held no joy. "The collective is gone." "But so are billions of people," Morrison replied. "Everyone who was converted is dead." Lisa saved human independence, but at the cost of most of the human race. They returned to the damaged New Horizon and began receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. The harvest ships had gone silent and drifted powerless through space. The alien structures on Earth had collapsed, and the few unchanged humans who had survived were beginning to emerge from hiding. Dr. Sandra Mills was among the survivors, broadcasting from the ruins of New York. "The conversion process has been reversed, but only for those who had not been fully integrated into the collective. We estimate that less than 10% of Earth's population survived." Similar reports came from the human colonies and from the alien civilizations that had been harvested. The lucky few who had not been fully converted were free, but entire worlds had been emptied by the weapon's activation. Captain Morrison recorded a final log entry as the New Horizon began its journey back to Earth. "Today we learned that freedom sometimes comes at a price too terrible to calculate. Lisa Chen saved humanity from becoming part of something alien and vast, but in doing so, she condemned billions of innocent people to death." He paused, looking out at the stars that now seemed empty and cold. "We will return to Earth and help rebuild what remains of human civilization, but we will also remember that our independence was bought with the sacrifice of those we were trying to save." Dr. Wright stood beside him, watching the stars. "The collective is gone, but so is the galaxy we knew. We'll have to learn to live with what we've done and try to build something better from what remains." As the New Horizon headed home, they carried with them the knowledge that Earth no longer pretended to sleep. The ancient hunger had been destroyed, but in its place was a silence that would echo through the galaxy for generations to come.